Your Trump 100 mic fluffy is getting the miles in, Mark. It's gone transatlantic.
It has gone transatlantic, and we are further away from each other than we have been, I think, ever on this podcast. You're in
That's
LA.
true.
Yeah, you're in LA, and me and my mic muff, as I call it, although apparently we're not allowed to call it a muff. Are, i- are i- we're in London. It's late at night here, so I'm slightly worried that there could be a knock at the door because it's a very small hotel, and the neighbours might not like it. But never mind, it's Trump 100. That's more important.
I'm Martha Kelner.
And I'm Mark Stone.
It's Tuesday, the 6th of May, and on day 107 of Trump's presidency, he's got a plan to make Hollywood great again.
And that's just one of a flurry of headlines over the weekend, from cash incentives for migrants to leave the US to reopening Alcatraz prison. But is it all a distraction? Now, Martha, while I've been traveling over to the UK, you've spent the day doing some reporting in your backyard, right? Because Trump has got his eye on Hollywood.
Yeah, I guess at some point Donald Trump was always going to set his sights on the entertainment industry, and that came to be. He announced on Truth Social on Sunday evening that he wants to impose a 100% tariff on films produced outside the United States. The film industry in Hollywood, in his words, is dying a very fast death, and he wants the movies, as they call them here, to be made in America again.
Yeah, and he's right, isn't he? That Hollywood has had a pretty tough time of late.
Yeah, he's absolutely right. I spent this morning outside Sony Studios in Culver City, which is an area of Los Angeles steeped in the movie industry. It's home to the old MGM studios. So films like Citizen Kane, Wizard of Oz were made there. More recently, productions like Interstellar and The Dark Knight Rises. And this studio was busy with cars coming and going at the security gate. But a lot of that is post production and admin staff, because LA, or Hollywood, is no longer the beating heart of the film business. The industry here has declined 40% in the last decade, and it's been a particularly bruising last 5 years. First, there was COVID. Then the writers and actors strike at the same time in 2023. They delayed a number of big productions, blockbusters like Dune, The New Gladiator, the latest Marvel film, Captain America. They were all put on pause as the big studios negotiated with those unions over pay. And that's had a big knock on effect on lower paid film workers. People who are not on screen, they're doing things like hair and makeup, the lighting, running the catering on shoots, and most of them work freelance. So when production stopped or moved abroad, they had no money coming in, making it harder to meet rent in a city which is notoriously expensive. And
Yeah.
you add to that this year the LA wildfires, which destroyed homes across the city. That meant thousands of film workers were evacuated, unable to work while the fires were going on. So it's been pretty brutal. And I spoke to a guy in a prop shop earlier. They have this warehouse which is brimful of supplies, like African artifacts, replica handguns, tea sets from the 18th century. They supply all sorts of productions: Oppenheimer, The Fablemans, Ghostbusters. And he told me that business for them is as slow as he can remember. He says there is no doubt about it. Something needs to be done to revive Hollywood, to save the film industry here. But he doesn't understand how tariffs can be applied to films, which are so often a collaborative process between different countries.
You know, as I was driving into London this afternoon from the West Country, and there is a massive new set of studios, loads of different massive
Right.
warehouses. I just looked it up. It only opened in the last couple of years, and it's hosting American film producers and American
Yeah.
streamers as well. They're coming here to make their films. A lot of that is because the UK, along with New Zealand, Australia, other countries as well, are offering tax breaks to production companies to make their films here. And with California getting more expensive, you can kind of see, A, why film producers are moving
Mhm.
elsewhere, and B, why Donald Trump wants to bring them back.
Yeah, it makes massive economic sense. And in fact, California is now only the sixth biggest producer of films worldwide, behind the UK, behind Canada, behind Australia. Uh, so a lot of the time when a film or TV show is set in New York, it's actually Toronto's skyscrapers you're seeing, because it is far cheaper for production to happen there than in the real New York City. San Andreas, for example, blockbuster film about a California earthquake was actually shot in Australia. And that's what Trump's trying to combat, this idea that, yes, the big studios might save money making their films abroad, but if they want to show them in the US, it would cost them double. So, would it be worth it for them to move their production abroad? It's not clear, for example, whether these tariffs will be applied retroactively to films already in production. Spider Man 4 filming this summer in the UK. Will that be subject to levies? And what about independent productions that can't afford to pay these massive tariffs? Will it simply mean that fewer productions happen overall? I think that's the overwhelming fear in the industry.
A big question too about the practicalities of how you apply tariffs to such a particular industry. Now,
Yeah.
The World Trade Organization has a pause on tariffs for digital goods until 2026. Presumably, films count as digital goods as well. So, will this tariff be allowed under their rules? And will Donald Trump even care? I mean, he's already pulled out of quite a few globalist institutions. The World Trade Organization is one that he has paused some funding for, so he may not
Mhm.
give a monkeys about what they think. And then, of course, the details of what will the tariffs actually be applied to? Will it be box office revenue, or will it be production costs? Will it be streaming companies like Netflix and Disney Plus? Remember, Netflix and Disney, they are US companies, so they may well put some of their production outside the US, but the revenue will still be plowed back in a large part to the United States. So there's an awful lot that we just don't know about this at the moment.
White House spokesperson Kush Desai said the Trump administration is exploring options to deliver on the Make Hollywood Great Again plan, but that no final decisions have yet been made on what it will look like. So essentially, for now, Mark, it feels like just a headline.
Yeah, and there've been a few of those over the course of the weekend. We'll get to a couple of the others in a moment, including the plan to reopen Alcatraz in San Francisco. But first, Martha, I wanted to mention that Jordan's King Abdullah has been in DC over the past day or so.
Yeah.
But it appears that he didn't meet President Trump. Remember, King Abdullah of Jordan was in Washington earlier this year, a few weeks into Trump's presidency, for a state visit back then. It was just after Trump had said that he wanted to buy Gaza and to move Palestinians out. And Abdullah appeared to please Trump by making an offer that appeared to be kind of off the cuff to take in 2,000 injured Palestinian children. Well,
Yeah.
fast forward to today, and it turns out that Abdullah has not actually taken in 2,000 injured children. He's taken around just under 50 at the moment. And the reason the
Mm.
Jordanians are saying is because they are not convinced that they will ever be allowed back to Gaza if they leave. And the wider story here, the Jordanians, the Egyptians, Arabs do not believe that Palestinians will ever be allowed back if they are allowed to leave. And so they
Mhm.
are resisting. So I think that will be a key part of the discussion that Abdullah is having in Washington. Although, as I say, he's not due to meet the president, but he has met, we understand, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio.
And you're heading along with President Trump to the Middle East next week, Mark. How much of Trump's visit will be focused on Gaza and the deteriorating humanitarian situation there?
Well, it is deteriorating if it could ever get any worse. The Israelis have announced a new plan, which is breathtaking. To be honest, they are saying that they will move back into Gaza. And that they will effectively flatten Gaza as they move from north to south, and they will move people to an area in the south of Gaza, or give them the option to voluntarily, and I've got my hands in inverted commas here because it's
Yeah.
hardly voluntary, to voluntarily leave Gaza. To answer your question, as things stand, I don't think that Gaza will actually feature massively in Trump's Middle East
Right.
visit. And that's largely because it just doesn't look good for him. Gaza is now a disaster. And it's clearly not something he is going to want to focus on. His focus on this trip will be more likely to be a nuclear deal with Iran to prevent it from getting a nuclear weapon, and
Yeah.
also the Russia Ukraine talks, the peace talks there, which, remember, Saudi Arabia is kind of hosting. I think the next sort of fortnight is going to be very, very important indeed. Now, Martha, as I said, we've had a flurry of headlines over the course of the weekend, so let's try and get through a few of them. Trump has announced a plan to increase deportations, hasn't he?
Yeah, this is something that he's been focused on throughout his presidency so far. But now the administration has begun offering undocumented immigrants $1,000 and assistance travelling to their native country if they leave the United States on their own. The Department of Homeland Security was already running this scheme where people in the US illegally could self report in an app and receive assistance to return to their home country. But now they have this cash incentive too.
Yeah, the DHS, Department for Homeland Security, is saying it will actually save the United States money, as the average cost of arresting, detaining, and deporting someone without legal status is currently about $17,000. That's according to their own data. This is all part of a plan to increase deportation numbers, but it will be interesting to see how this plan to give them money, how that plays with the MAGA base.
Yeah, another jaw-dropping story over the weekend, Mark. One that, you find yourself, struggling to believe that you can be living through these times is Donald Trump saying he plans to reopen Alcatraz prison. I don't know whether you've ever done the tour to Alcatraz before in San
I
Francisco.
haven't ever. My son has, in fact. I had my brief, my podcast brief on Alcatraz from my 11-year-old earlier on. And he said all you need to escape from Alcatraz is some cutlery, because apparently that's how they got out. They cut the wall open with cutlery and escaped that way. It wasn't the
Yeah.
safe. It wasn't the most secure of prisons.
It wasn't, contrary to what people say, that it was the most impossible to escape from.
Yeah,
But
there were a few.
it is an amazing place to visit, fascinating. It's one of the great short boat journeys, looking back onto the city skyline, heading towards this rock in the middle of San Francisco Bay, and it's hugely evocative being there, imagining the lives of these inmates, the guards as well. What I didn't ever imagine is that anyone would consider reopening it in the modern day, because it is simply not fit to be a modern prison. It would have to be knocked down and started all over again at huge cost.
It's all about optics. It's all about what looks good, and it's a great headline. I mean, to start with, Alcatraz, I think at its height, only actually held about 300 inmates. It's a very
Yeah.
small island. And America already has, supermax prisons, which already houses America's most dangerous criminals. So there is no need, I don't think, to reopen Alcatraz, but you can see why the headline looks great. It is America's most famous, most infamous prison, and so to say he's going to reopen it again, it looks great. And it's worth saying that the prison service in the US has said that they will look into it, look into how they can to rebuild it, reopen it. But I don't see it happening anytime soon.
Yeah, I'm sure they might look into it, but I don't think it will actually come to be. It feels like a bit of a distraction. And remember, a few months ago, there was that plan to house 30,000 deported migrants in Guantanamo Bay. Hundreds of tents were built on the base to house the migrants. None of them have been used, and now they're being removed.
Yeah.
So it feels like a sideshow to me. We're expecting also this week the impact of Trump's tariff war with China start to bite. The last cargo ships to leave China before the tariffs were imposed will arrive in the United States, mainly in California this week. So it could be that he's throwing some positive news around to his base before this negative news lands as these ships arrive in California. That's it for today, but as always, we'd love to hear from you. Our email is trump100@sky.uk.
Remember too that you can follow the podcast for free wherever you're listening, so you never miss an episode.
And we'll see you tomorrow for another day of Trump 100.
Bye.
See you then.